Well, thank you, Secretary Card. I'm very glad you're involved in this effort. And I must say, as an enthusiast and friend of Carl Gershman's for many years, many years, over a generation, I deeply appreciate not only the important contribution for human freedom he makes, but for all of you, each of you, that continue to support this effort of the National Endowment for Democracy. I got to tell you, it's one of the most important things in terms of human freedom that anybody could dedicate their life to. And I also want to share with you that when it comes to the key decisions, the judgment, not just in terms of Eastern Europe or in terms of, Asia, I'm just thinking for a moment about this decision on North Korea. The information from the National Endowment for Democracy that was given to me to convince us to have a hearing, and there at that hearing to hear Tae-young Ho, the defector who left London. That was their concept, to bring him here to the United States. But once here, they made sure that not only did he have the opportunity to speak to the American people through C-SPAN on what we did in Congress, but to set up a way for him to communicate with media across the United States. How much more we have learned as a people here and internationally as a result of what the NED does, but how much more the people inside North Korea have learned, because those thumb drives and shortwave radio broadcasts, they reach people the same way they reached people in Eastern Europe. There is one organization that really has a handle, in my view, on how you get the truth out, how you get the information out there around the world. And they work against tremendous odds. If you look at the billions of dollars that authoritarian regimes spend around the world to put out disinformation, it is you here today that help them get the truth out. And most importantly, to get the truth out to the people who most need to hear from the outside world, the people who are most oppressed, the people who are, receiving disinformation day in, day out. I think it's important also that the four organizations that they're recognizing tonight for their 2018 NED Democracy Award, the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights, the Now Action and Unity for Human Rights, the Transitional Justice Working Group, the Unification Media Group, to our friends, 안녕하세요. And let me say, as someone who has been in North Korea only once, but I will tell you, what I saw there was deeply disturbing. But my conversations in South Korea over my many trips with defectors who told me the personal experiences, who told me the tragedies of what they had seen, that still is with me. The young woman who told me that in the Gulag, she had survived it, but while there, she did not even have the right to smile. And beyond the 120,000 people, individuals who can be sent there for 3 generations because of the perceived crime of one individual. Besides that house of horrors, besides that which so moved the conscience of the UN, that the UN Human Rights Commission found that the crimes committed by this regime are so egregious that, in our words, they shock the conscience of humanity. That's the kind of reaction one gets when we hear the personal stories. That's the human reaction to this kind of indignity. And that's why it's so important that the National Endowment for Democracy continue this effort, because there are truly no parallels in the modern world that I can think of the magnitude of the crimes there. Because you think about the lack of rights beyond just the Gulag for the average person in North Korea. And it is so bleak when you have these conversations about the conditions. So it's critical. It's critical also that we continue the efforts on the shortwave broadcasts, on the thumb drives, get them into the country. It's critical that you continue your efforts, those of you here, and this is why I'm glad Secretary Card is taking such a prominent role. You need to do everything you can do, but also everything you can do to recruit your friends who think like you, that the future of humanity matters. Recruit them into supporting this effort. I think about what one sees in North Korea, where elites live in luxury, relative luxury, while millions of people literally starve. I asked Wang Zhongyap, the former propaganda minister, after he defected years ago, how many people starved to death? He said, no, how many were starved to death? They weren't a priority. Our weapons system was the priority. I said, well, how many? We say 2 million. He says, no, it wasn't 2 million. He says it was 1.9 million people. 1.9 million souls were starved to death by the regime who did not deliver food in those no-go areas. So your efforts are already putting pressure on the regime. Information is getting in. We have to accelerate this. And as you know, we in the House and in the Senate have passed legislation to reauthorize the North Korean Human Rights Act. This bill continues our broadcast. It updates our efforts to include more modern technology to spread outside information. And while we should not disregard diplomacy, the reality in the long term is that this regime will never really be at peace with its own people or neighbors or us unless it changes its ways. So I thank the National Endowment for Democracy for some of the most important work that goes on this planet. And I especially want to just take a moment to thank Carl personally for his lifetime's dedication to this cause. Thank you, Carl.